Hello and welcome to Career Track by Climate Connect, a series where we explore the journeys of people building careers in the climate space. I'm Harsha and welcome to this episode. So, we started this podcast to help students and young professionals understand the climate landscape and know where they fit in, even to be able to contribute, right? So, today we have with us Darshan, who's leading TBL Consulting Services. His role focuses on helping organizations design transformative strategies that go beyond the bottom line impact. Darshan, thank you so much for taking up the time today for us. For
Sure.
people listening in, right, could you just share a little bit about your journey, like where you started your career from, and then what eventually drew you into the sustainability and ESG space?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I have seen the work that Global Shippers Mumbai has been doing, and it's incredible to see how you've been able to rally a whole pool of young minds around the field of sustainability, and that's worth an applause. And thank you for those who are listening for your interest in the space. So, my journey, the way I call it, is completely accidental in this space. I grew up in the 1980s and 1990s when the jargons of sustainability and CSR and ESG were yet to be established in the MSME space or had to be further passed on the value chain. Even in the top 150, companies, it was very as required unless some of them were fundamentally taught to think about that. I rather started my journey as a social worker, started field work, somehow got a scholarship to do my master's in social work with diploma in peace and conflict resolution at Duke University and University of North Carolina in USA. And it's there that when I was pursuing my master's in social work, I specifically was pursuing the track not-for-profit management. And one of our faculty then, Professor Dr. Gary Nelson, first time introduced me to the concept of triple bottom line. It was a casual discussion over a cup of coffee when I was talking to him about business back home. And he was like, "Oh, so is your business a triple bottom line business?" And I was like, "What does that even mean?" Long story short, I was enamored by that concept of how do you really look at people, planet, and finally profits and really be sustainable. Uh, that was a time when Dr. Gary was putting together a cohort of young fellows, students who would work on making small and medium businesses more sustainable in the RTP area, the Research Triangle Park area, which was Durham, Cary, and Chapel Hill. And I was lucky to be selected as one of the first fellows. We worked on a certification called Go Green Plus for medium and small medium enterprises, mom and pop shops to become sustainable, incentivize them to become sustainable. And that's how I got into the space of sustainability. So I owe it to Dr. Gary Nelson.
No, that's great to hear. So you've said that, it was accidental, but and you just came into this space, right? But was there a turning point where you decided that this is where I want to dedicate my entire career into?
So I would look at my career into three verticals. The vertical of the work focused on grassroots impact and the not-for-profit work, the way we call it, unfortunately, but that's the because not-for-profit is kind of really, I would like to say, kind of putting a whole, locking it into a space, and that's not what it is about. Life is all about impact. But anyway, for the sake of this discussion, if I put it into three buckets, one is that on-ground impact work. Then comes the CSR space, which evolved in India since 2011, just right after I got back from the US. And then comes the ESG space. So the impact space, I think I landed again in that space by default at the age of 14. I was a child with ADHD, had multiple other school and classroom issues like many of us would have. And to channelize my energies in a positive way, someone suggested that I start volunteering for not-for-profit causes. And that's how I got into this space. And it took my heart. Ended up starting my not-for-profit when I was 16. Was lucky enough to have His Holiness the Dalai Lama as the first mentor, moving on to Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam as my very close mentor. And that kind of froze me in this space. So there, I think that's where I knew I was going to be in this space. And that's how I landed up the scholarship to do my master's. It was in the master's that I was introduced to responsible business. And one of the questions that Gary had asked me, how do businesses operate in India? American market is completely focused on capitalism. How do businesses operate in India? And that question took me back to the whole business spectrum and the stories that I heard about Tata's, Birla's, Bajaj, of how they came into being to build a nation and how the today's businesses are coming up. And then I had this question that I wanted to come back and ask my own father, who was a businessman, that why can't we do businesses in a way that we are responsible? What's the point of giving millions and billions after earning profits but not paying fair wages to our employees? Uh, was the kind of question that was framing in my mind. And that I think was a turning point to really say, okay, I really want to focus on making businesses more responsible and really focus on this segment of mom and pop shops, SMEs, because there's no incentive in that space to be more sustainable. So, yeah, uh, that would be it.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And you mentioned how, how to create more responsible businesses. But like from where I am right now, uh, in India, I feel like CSR is often viewed as just compliance, right? So how do you sort of see it becoming more and more important in the current landscape that we're in? And like, how do we go about that?
So, I think it goes back to the story I was narrating, right? Like, it's a great law in the concept. It is also not something new to Indians. Indian business sector has always been leading philanthropy. If you go back to our roots of 1800s and 1900s, you see most of the institutions that are building India today, the foundation was laid by Tata Group, and not out of any profit-making intention, but purely of nation building. Let alone that the original uh, Prime Minister's Relief Fund, was created on the behest of JRD's letter to Mr. Nehru, saying in these troubling times, this was post-partition, you need private enterprise to participate in nation building. This is my first check. I think it was then a 1 lakh rupee check. Please invite other investors and put together this fund. So if you look at it, our social responsibility or social engagement or ability to build nation and the desire to build nation was always ingrained in our businesses. So I think we really need to go back to that soul and find that soul of why we do it. And to the non-believers, I say, you have to do it, right? You might not believe in it, but you have to do it. Then why not put the soul in it and do it better? So for believers, it's anyway about finding that soul. And for non-believers, it's about putting that soul in because if you have to anyway do it, why not do it? And I'm specifically talking only of CSR right now. I'm not moving into the larger because CSR again, CSR, sustainability, and ESG are such confusing terminologies. Globally, CSR is the larger umbrella. ESG is a subset of it. In India, sustainability is a larger umbrella where CSR and ESG are subsets of it. And then CSR is governed by its own law and ESG has its own laws and reporting. So instead of getting into jargon, it's about that specific money that I'm spending outside for the well being of the society. And the second point to that is can I actually have those businesses work in a way that their employees or their team feels that I'm part of this larger mission? Let's look at responsible businesses and their attrition rates, and businesses, so called purely corporate businesses and their attrition rates. Without naming names, if you just do a simple Google search, you will see which companies have highest attrition rates and which companies have lowest attrition rates. So I think that's a very good benchmark to identify which is a responsible business.
So just to expand on this a little bit more to help us understand what is it that you really do, right? Can you just walk us through, say, a project that you've done or an initiative that you've taken on that you're most proud of, from how you started conceptualizing it to actually creating, implementing it on ground?
So that's a very broad question, and there are zillion
Yeah.
stories in my mind. Going back, way back from the start of my career, starting my own friend society, of which Dr. Kalam became a mentor to today. But I'll try and limit it to TBL Consultancy Services, the space that I started in 2018, with exactly this vision that we wanted to bring in these deep-rooted values back to the ecosystem of all of this jargon, charity, philanthropy, CSR, ESG. Fortunately or unfortunately, we still had to use the stick of the jargon because that's how we sell ourselves in the market. So our offerings are bucketed in three verticals. One is philanthropic consulting and services, where we work with high net worth families, really deriving the why and outcome and the impact that they want to focus on. CSR, which works with corporates, and we build CSR into ESG portfolio. So I would divide, before I give an example, I think what I would like to draw to is our core philosophy where we work it is where we start with the why. So to
Hmm.
give you an example, one of our clients, when we approached him and we started saying, okay, why would you like to give this X amount of money? And we started digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And we realized there were certain stories or certain currents that they were seeing around them that were really bothering them. And they were afraid that those currents would come back to their family and their next generation in some time. And that's where they would like to probably help prevent those or work on those in advance. And lo and behold, an amazing new, again, here I would go back to the jargon, we created a new ecosystem. We created a space for addiction prevention. So when everyone talks of a de-addiction, we said, okay, what is it that will start preventing addictions in the first place? How can we look at it? We did research, we looked at multiple things, and it pointed us to a fundamental belief that if you build enough resilience in an individual and ability to say no, addictions can be prevented. And I have data to support all of this. I'm just kind of cutting the story short. Today, we are a certified program. We have had more than 50,000 students who passed through it. We are coming with India's first ever, and I'm talking of India, imagine this, India's first ever status of addiction in youth report for a city. We are doing it for Pune city, but we are coming up with the first year, which will be released next month. No agency has data of what kind of addictions prevail at what rate in which communities, what are addiction hotspots, not hotspots. Rather, when you go to discuss with government, the addiction takes very narrow definition of drugs
Hmm.
and somewhat alcohol. We are covering cyber or digital addiction. We are also looking at addiction of energy drinks and other aspects. So it's about diving deep and kind of really understanding the why of the problem and then unlayering that why to really further point the cause that you can target and working on that cause. So if we, again, taking the help of the, I want to move the needle in the addiction space and create a policy that is prevents addiction, then we need data to tell to the government that this is where your addictions are. This is what you need to do. And where will I get that data? I need to do a study. Then my next job is to go and convince my donor, saying if your end goal is to prevent addictions from taking root in the society, this is the route you need to take, and this is why you need to do the study. Now imagine this conversation where I go and pitch saying, hey, we need to do a study, versus me going through this route and then pitching why you need to do a study. What would sell, right? So that's the kind of journeys that we walk through. And that is where then our measurable impact comes. With obviously, and the other part that's very critical for all of this is to do everything that you do time bound. Anything left open saying change will happen someday, it's tough. It's tough. It's you might not be able to change the whole ecosystem today, but can you put measurable milestones along the way and achieve those milestones? And more often than not, I've realized in my journey, I really don't know my end milestone when I start anything. I know the next milestone. And by the time I reach the next milestone clears up or slightly becomes
Yeah.
unhazed, if I say so. So it's also about not trying to, and it's also overwhelming, right? If I started this day one saying, okay, I want to change the addiction policy of state of Maharashtra, I would have never started that program. I don't know what I would have done. We started by saying, what can we do to prevent it? Today we are saying we would like to get into the policy phase. So it's also an evolutionary journey.
Correct. No, and
Yeah.
thanks because the scale of these projects is so huge, right? Both the scale and the scope. Like, yeah, for like, how do you even start solving those problems? And these are problems that have never been solved. So just
So
on
sorry
this,
to interrupt. I'm going to
hmm
add one more example
hmm
specifically from ESG space because this is
hmm
focused on that.
hmm
So I was working with a corporate and we wanted to create Asia's first ever zero waste to landfill plant.
okay.
Now, this corporate's product was such that it had mixture of cables and fibers and everything all put together, and that slurry and sludge, it was impossible to segregate. Now, if day one, when I entered the boardroom, and this is a company where I initiated the terminology of sustainability and ESG and started them on that journey. Imagine if on day one I would have said, Ki, you have to convert this plant into zero waste to landfill. But the journey, the way it went was,
Yeah.
okay, let's take a walk around the shop floor. It was literally dragging the promoter on the shop floor and saying, let's take a walk around the shop floor and what do you see? Oh, is this all garbage lying around that you see? Okay. What do you think is the value of all of this material that's lying around?
Hmm.
And what is the hazard condition for your employee? And that's where the journey started. 6 years down the line, they had Asia's first certified zero waste to landfill plant. So again, the journey is you really need to start on field and understand the root causes and the problems and build upon that the larger visions. Because when you go to the shop floor worker understands that better than zero waste to landfill. So I
Yeah.
just thought I should add that experience because
No.
a lot of my
Yeah.
interactions nowadays when I do these interviews of new age students from ESG space happen with all of these big ambitious goals. But when I start grilling it down, the fundamentals have to be very strong.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's not just about thinking of it as an environmental problem, but rather also a business problem, right? And you need to be able to break it down to the like most fundamental level and use first principles to solve these complex problems. So
Again,
also,
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of
yeah,
the jargon of first principles, whatever that is. But yeah, I presume it's exactly the same thing that we are speaking of.
yeah. So now I just wanted to understand from you, like, what has been your toughest part of building these strategies, right? What's the biggest challenge that you see currently?
That's a big question, and I have to figure out how to be politically correct in answering that, considering this is a podcast and it's going to go on public platform. I think there are many challenges. The as good as the CSR law is, I think it's minimalized doing good to an act to a percentage and not to the cause of why you need to do it. Again, going back to my favorite example of the Tata Birla Bajaj, three families who shaped India and how they give versus how many new age corporates do it. Uh, the core ethos and the value is lost. So uh, it's like, someone trying to, again, going back to my addiction prevention space, someone trying to tell me I should not smoke while everyone around me is smoking versus someone trying to build that internal resilience for me to stop from smoking. So I think we've lost the core value or the why we do it in the first place. Why we are speaking of all of this jargon? Why do we want to do it? What is the end goal that we want to achieve out of all of this? And a lot of this is becoming about compliances, tick boxes, greenwashing, whitewashing, impact stories, brands, awards. Uh, I'm surprised how many paid awards out there exist, and everyone is some award. I think I had also won one award of CSR, something from someone long ago. So everything has become about that external recognition, but what is it? Because at the end of the day, if you go to sustainability at its core, it's about sustainability of life, right? So are you sustainable? Are you mentally happy? Are you emotionally happy? Are you in that space where you can work? And the moment you start doing that, things around you start falling in place. And I'm slightly taking this discussion into a different plane. People like to call it spiritual or whatever. But the point is, unless you don't go to the core of why you're doing it and why that sustainability matters, it becomes about, okay, I want to make him sustainable. वो ठीक है यार आप उसको sustainable कर दोगे. What about you becoming sustainable in that ecosystem? And that's when then the whole work-life balance clashes and everything starts. So again, none of these are isolated pieces. They are like an interconnected spectrum that you really need to look at and say, okay, what is my role?
Hmm.
Where is this going? And how am I going to build there? So I think the biggest challenge that I've seen is to really convince them to deep dive and look at it. More often than not, the calls I get uh, range from saying, "Hey, we need this compliance for this client," to, "Hey, can you get us this certification in this grade?" The most favorite is EcoVadis. Can you get us a silver EcoVadis or a whatever gold EcoVadis? While my practices might be as close to bronze. And how do I really fundamentally instill it? And more
Yeah.
often than not, and I'm not ashamed to accept this, I lose the battle. If I'm pitching to 10 clients, I end up signing one or two because eight of them want instant results. And me and my team, all of us are very clear that we are not getting into that space. We would love to do it if you want to deep dive with us and really understand the fundamentals.
I mean, thank you, Darshan, for being so candid with your response. I think this is going to really help people understand that they need to first understand their own purpose and their own values to be able to get into this space. Um,
If I am
so,
throwing a piece of garbage while walking on the road on the sideway, or I drink a glass of water and spill half of it in the sink, Uh, or if I see a beggar and I'm unable to put a hand in my pocket and pick, that's not the exaggeration. What I'm going to say, I'm unable to feel the empathy. How
Correct.
can I advise anyone to do anything about it?
Correct.
And even if I advise, how can I go home and sleep at night, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that dichotomy that's living within me.
Yeah. And I always believe that how you do anything is how you do everything. So
Yes, 200%.
people just need to like reflect and understand themselves before, they just fall into this trap of I want to position myself as working in the sustainability space, in the climate space. But just
Or if I can be very candid, I'm sorry to say, but everyone who's coming out today is an expert.
yeah, that's
How
true.
can a graduate of a 2 year academic program be expert? I've had done so many interviews where I've asked people to define ESG, give me basics of CSR law. On CV पे लिखा हुआ है 3 year CSR projects, expert in CSR, leading expert in CSR. I asked CSR law fundamentals and zero, blank.
Yeah.
Let's spend time on the ground यार छक्के पंजे समझो काम कैसे होता है समझो हाथ गंदे करो
Yeah.
ये मतलब आपको अगर कुछ उगाना है तो मिट्टी में हाथ नहीं डालोगे तो उगाओ कैसे मॉनिटर करके कुछ नहीं सीखने वाले हो आप मिट्टी का
Yeah.
ग्रेड नहीं समझेगा कौन सा कीचड़ है कौन सी मिट्टी है किसमें उगता है किसमें नहीं उगता है ये कैसे समझेगा तो
Yeah.
unless you actually learn to do it and I really struggle with this frankly मतलब I think TBL has the highest ratio of rejections where probably out of 1500 applicants we accept one because 99% are experts who are fresh graduates
Yeah.
and they want to let alone transform TBL. They want to transform the sector, saying we will change the sector forever. I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah.
great to know. I would love to be in the audience to clap for you the day that happens.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for my sarcasm, but I think
No,
that's a very
I
harsh
agree.
reality that young people today need to know, and especially in the world of AI and everything. Like, what is it that you are specialist about today? And what is the
Correct.
value addition you are going to bring? क्योंकि knowledge आप जो लेके आ रहे हो ना उससे अच्छा knowledge मेरे पास है available. As today, me
Correct.
also as a consultant, I tell to my clients bluntly that you don't need me anymore for my knowledge. The knowledge that you can access online with all the new age tools is way far better.
Exactly.
What you need me is for connecting the dots from my experience of being on the field for 2 decades and what actually transpires around it. And then doing human centered design around programs to really ensure that the goal that we want to achieve happens. Because all these AI tools are going to give you paper projects way better than anyone can ever give you.
Correct.
So it's also a rude awakening for everyone to think, and I'm being very candid. I was with a multi-billion corporation of India, one amongst the top 10 yesterday, and one of their board members really looked at me and said, Darshan, 2 ढाई साल का बात है 2 ढाई साल में ये पूरा निकल जाएगा कंसल्टेंसी वगैरह ये मिड लेवल का थॉट ओपिनियन ये मैनेजर वगैरह पूरा हमारा निकल जाएगा काम 3 साल में हमारा ये पूरा एक लेयर खाली होने वाला है बचेंगे डिसीजन मेकर्स और डूअर्स
Yeah.
और इनके बीच में इंटरप्रेटर रहेगा कैन यू बी दैट इंटरप्रेटर एंड इफ यू वांट टू बी दैट इंटरप्रेटर डू यू हैव इनफ एक्सपीरियंस ऑन बोथ साइड्स टू बी दैट इंटरप्रेटर
Correct. No, and I think with young people right now, what's happening is that in the rat race, right? To be very honest, you have to maintain the optics of just like being relevant. So I think this is where all of this is coming from. But again, it's very important to just, again, as you said, like be on ground. First, understand and learn your fundamentals. Um,
I don't know if you've seen there's this whole social media video where there are two slopes. One is a straight slope and one is a curving slope.
mhm.
And a boy puts two ball bearings on the two slopes. What do you think? Which slope would go faster?
um, I mean,
There's a straight slope, right?
the straight slope
सीधा
looks shorter.
सीधा नीचे जाना चाहिए, बराबर?
Yeah, yeah,
The law of physics says opposite.
yeah.
The law of physics, the ball bearing on the curvy slope goes faster. What I'm trying to say is, in the rat race, if you want to run ahead, you will have to sprint and you will burn out at some point in time.
Hmm.
If you get into that race by diving deep, learning traits, finding your why, and at that journey, it will be more fulfilling. It will be much deeper, and probably it might be much faster. I don't know.
So Darshan, let's say there is a 22-year-old in India, right? And they they want to try the space out. What are the possible options, entry points for them? How should they even start, right? Do they start with an NGO? Like, what are the different options that they can try?
I would say, unless and again, unless you really have financial needs which you need to meet today. 22 is the age when can you put 22 to 25, 26, 27, can you put your priority on really gaining experience? And if that's what your priority is and you are able to put that in place, obviously financial is a priority. Unfortunately, there's any job that
Yeah.
pays is need to go. That's the reality. But if there's a way to adjust that and you know that my minimum requirement is X and if I get that, that's enough. My financial goals can kick in after 27, 28. I would say get into any job that's going to put you on the field. Don't get into a boardroom job. Don't get into executive job. जब
Hmm.
तक आप हाथ गंदे नहीं करोगे आपको नहीं पता चलेगा क्या हो रहा है. Can you be a EHS, what do you say, what do we call them? Associate, EHS associate on the shop floor. Can you be a data tracker if data is your uh, strong suit? Can you actually do field work? Can you actually just join an NGO doing tree plantations and understand what's going on? And trust me, your first job might be more disappointing than you might think. But through that the reason I say that is because I work in the space and because I took the example of tree plantation. It's one of the most greenwash space ever. But it's through those insights, disappointment or happiness. Let's not disqualify that either. I realize I'm being too pessimistic, sarcastic on this space, but point is the learnings that you will draw through them will help you build that ladder that will take you a long way. So if you really want to start your career at that space, really go deep and prioritize learning. Prioritize learning, prioritize experience, prioritize deep diving.
Yeah.
The moment you prioritize that and get your priorities right, the opportunities are mind blowing. The first opportunity I got through was an email that I wrote saying, "Hey, I need monthly 1,500 rupees to sustain, but I want this experience. Can I come and volunteer with you?"
Hmm.
They didn't end up paying me. I luckily got a mentor who paid me 1,500 rupees, and against that, I started volunteering with that organization. It was a mind-blowing experience. The kind of things I learned there was unbelievable. So yeah.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think that has really helped me also, just to like reflect on my career right now. But also, Darshan, so for example, um, young people are often conflicted about, should I focus on getting the soft skills in place or should I focus on getting some hard skills? Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, what should people really be focusing on in their early stages? Should they think that, oh, like, I want to be a good communicator, or do they start using these technical tools to be able to execute properly on ground?
I'm sorry, I have a counter question here. Do you ever think that do I need to breathe first or eat first?
Mm. It happens both at
We,
the same time.
huh?
It happens at the same
We
time.
need to breathe,
Yeah,
right? To live and
yeah,
eat.
yeah.
My heart, hands are my hard skill, but my brain is my soft skill, right? I need both of them to function.
Hmm,
How do you think you're going to convince anyone else about your hard skills if you cannot communicate?
hmm,
How do you think you would be able to get someone to listen to you if you don't have knowledge of that space or if you have the humility for that person not to push you off? Other factors, I'm again going to be generalist, but another factor, the amount of arrogance I see today around me. Amazing, man, amazing. Everyone is there to change the world. Everyone is an expert. Everyone is like, I know better than you. There's nothing wrong in saying I don't know better than you. Rather, one of the best philosophies I had ever heard in my life from one of my mentors was, "Yeda ban ke peda khao." You will learn much more. If I come to you and say, "Hey, Asha, I don't know anything about global shapers. Can you please help me?" Wouldn't you be willing to share everything that you know about it?
that's
Versus me coming and tell you, "Hey, I know global shippers does this, and I know Shubhangi, and I know this, and I know that," and you'll be like, "हाँ इसको सब मालूम है क्या देना है?" So I think it's not about soft or hard skills. It's about being human. Soft skills is about being human. And if I cannot be a human, what hard skills do I have to offer? I think that's, yeah, for me it comes down to that. being human is the first thing before I build any hard skill. Maybe being a car driver, maybe being a business owner, maybe being an ASG professional. They are not either or, they are and.
Yeah, I agree. No, thanks, Darshan, for being so brutally honest. Really appreciate it. So we've almost come to the end of our podcast. So, but I have two quick rapid fire questions for you. So the
Right.
first one is, what book or podcast would you sort of recommend that has shaped your thinking on creating impact?
Book or podcast? Okay. So podcasts I'm not big into, I'll be very candid.
Or any resources?
So I've read tremendously, and the stories of Tatas have shaped me mind-blowingly. Like I have a whole library full of only Tata books. Like whatever comes out, want to get my hands on it. I love staring at those pictures, seeing where their journey started and where it comes from. So, from book perspective, I think one of the best books to pick up is Beyond the Last Blue Mountain by R.M. Lala about J.R.D. Tata's journey. It's a mind-blowingly beautiful book. I love it. And it's a story. And I remember when we were conversing about this, you wanted to ask about how stories matter. And this is how stories matter because they shape thought process and they
Yeah,
inspire others.
yeah.
But one of the episodes that shaped my journey in this sector, and the lady who shaped it was this social worker called Renutai Gavaskar, who is known as matlab mother in the red light districts of Pune. And I think she, so again, here's a small episode, but it's worth knowing for everyone because how quick we are to judge. This was when probably I was 12, 13, 14. She used to work in the red light district of Pune and invited me to come and volunteer there. And I was a new person, I had no idea where to go. So I went. Unfortunately, I could not find her that day, but I saw a woman eating some idli, and she had a small baby crawling near her feet, asking for some food. And the woman actually kicked that baby and it kept on eating the idli. After a while in the evening, when I met Renu Tai, I was like, Tai, why do you want me to volunteer with these people? मतलब ये बच्चा भूखा है वो माँ खाना खा रही है कौन सा है? And that's when Tai looked at me and said, Darshan, keep your view outside when you come in here. That woman probably didn't have a client for a couple of days. She got first client. So she had to get enough energy to stand on her own feet, get things organized before she could feed her kid. Now just put yourself in those shoes. I have goosebumps when I narrate this to you, right?
Mhm.
Just put yourself in those shoes. And that's I think that was that moment of realization of my own feelings, my own judgments, my own limitations, and kind of shaping it further to saying, hey, I want to be in this space
That's
and
nice.
really achieve impact. And that's what, for me, impact became sustainable also because it was very easy to buy that idli and give it to that woman versus how do I make that woman sustainable? And uh, lo and behold, in 2010, when I was in the US doing my master's project was on integrate using social entrepreneurship as a tool to reintegrate commercial sex workers in mainstream society.
Thank you. I'll just quickly go on to the second question. So
Yeah.
Darshan, if you had a magic wand to solve one problem in the sustainability or social impact space, right, what would it be?
I'll take out the aura of philanthropy. I'll take out the aura of sanctity. I would say this is not something you do after. Start today. Today, because that aura is associated, I'm such a billionaire philanthropist or I'm such a responsible business, I want to do everything to show.
Yeah.
नहीं भाई ये हमारा रहने का स्टाइल है हम जिंदा ही ऐसे रहते हैं हमारा एम्प्लॉय हमारा रिटेंशन 100% है नो एम्प्लॉय वांट्स टू लीव बिकॉज वी पे देम वेल वी डोंट
Hmm.
स्queeze them their work life balance and it's practically possible if you look at the amount and someone would call me socialist for it whatever but just look at the tremendous amount that our economy has today. And I'm not also speaking of social redistribution, absolutely not. I'm just saying pay people absolutely right for their efforts. I think that's the first step too. And that's one thing I would like to solve.
Yeah. No, thanks. That's really helpful. So we this brings us to the end of our episode. Do you have any advice you'd like to leave with young people, especially people who are fresh out of college or ones who want to switch their careers, right, in their early stages? Any advice for them?
Learn to dive deep, struggle, and then learn to swim. don't start competitive swimming on day one. I
Mm.
think the earlier discussion alludes to what I'm trying to say right now
Yeah.
is just learn to dive, go deep. You are going to struggle. That's when you will learn to stay afloat. That's when you will learn to swim. And then you will go way past everyone else.
Yeah.
If that's what your ambition is. Mine was never. I'm very happy where I am at my pace. But yes, some might have those ambitions and it's good to pursue those.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for these insights. And I know for sure this is going to land deeply with anyone listening in. It did with me. So, yeah, that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you so much, Darshan, for being with us here today. Thank you so much for taking
Thank you,
the time.
Rashka. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Global Shippers, for trusting that I could add some value. I hope I did.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure and thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah. To everyone listening and watching, I hope this helped you learn a little bit more about ESG and CSR landscape. And if you, especially if you're thinking about it as a career option, thank you for sticking with us till the end. See you in the next episode.